Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair, the screech of alarms piercing the dim hum of the USS Vanguard's bridge. "Status," she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos like a laser. Lieutenant Rao, her tactical officer, spun from his console, sweat beading on his dark forehead. "Shields holding at 60%, ma'am. That was no warning, they're probing for weak points. Krathian cruisers, 3 of them. Closing fast from Vector 7. Elena nodded sharply, her mind racing through the fleet dispositions. Earth had turned the other cheek 1,000 times. Ignored the border skirmishes, the economic sabotage, the hollow broadcasts of alien superiority. But this incursion into Sol's outer rim, the 1,001st. All hands battle stations. Helm, evasive pattern Delta. Weapons lock on the lead ship but hold fire until my order." The bridge crew moved with practiced fury. Ensigns relaying coordinates, engineers patching systems over comms. Ensign Lila Torres, the young navigator at Elena's side, glanced up with wide eyes. "Captain, they're hailing us, demanding we stand down or face annihilation." Elena's jaw tightened. The Krathians, with their crystalline hulls and psionic tech, thought humans were pushovers. Soft diplomats, not warriors. She'd seen the reports, colonies raised, trade routes choked, no more. Put it on screen. The main viewer flickered, resolving into the grotesque visage of a Krathian commander, tentacles writhing around a maw of jagged teeth, eyes glowing with ethereal light. "Primitive vessel," it hissed in translated bursts, the voice like grinding glass. "Withdraw from this sector or be unmade. Your kind has no place in the stars." Elena leaned forward, her brown eyes steady, unflinching. "This is Captain Vasquez of Earth Force. You've crossed into our space uninvited, fired the first shot. We're not withdrawing. We're responding." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Transmit our logs to Fleet Command. Let them know the line's been drawn." The alien's tentacles flared in what Elena guessed was rage or disbelief. "You dare? Your worlds will burn for this insolence." "Try it," she replied, her tone ice cold. The channel cut and the viewer snapped back to tactical display, red icon swarming, the Krathian lead ship accelerating. Rao's voice rose over the din. "Incoming torpedoes, psionic warheads. They'll scramble our nav systems if they hit." "Countermeasures now," Elena ordered. The ship lurched as point defense guns spat fire. Azure bursts illuminating the void outside the viewports. One torpedo veered, detonating harmlessly, but another slipped through, slamming into the Vanguard's flank. Consoles sparked, lights flickered. Torres cried out as her station shorted, smoke curling from the panels. "Navigation's fried. We're drifting toward their formation." Elena's heart pounded, but she forced calm. Humans didn't break under pressure. They adapted. "Engineering, reroute auxiliary power to thrusters. Rao, target their engines, non-lethal if possible, but don't let them flank us." As the crew scrambled, Elena watched the enemy close in, their ships gleaming like predatory insects. The cost of this stand would be high. Ships lost, lives spent, but ignoring it would cost everything. Earth had endured enough. Today they fought back. Rao's fingers danced across the targeting console, sweat beading on his brow as he locked onto the lead enemy's thruster array. The Vanguard shuddered again, inertial dampeners whining under the strain of their uncontrolled drift. Alarms blared in staccato bursts, painting the bridge in red strobes. "Got a firing solution," Rao announced, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Firing disruptors, aiming to cripple, not kill." Elena nodded sharply, gripping the armrests of her command chair. The view screen showed the alien formation tightening like a noose. Sleek, angular vessels from the Krell Collective, their hulls iridescent under the distant starlight. They'd probed Earth's borders for years, raids on outposts, shadowed incursions. But this was different. This was an outright blockade of the Sol relay, cutting off human colonies. Blue lances of energy streaked from the Vanguard's forward banks. One hit true, shearing off a Krell cruiser's maneuvering fin in a bloom of plasma. The enemy ship listed venting atmosphere in a silent scream, but the others adapted fast. Counterfire erupted, kinetic rounds pummeling the Vanguard's shields. The deck plates vibrated, a deep groan echoing through the hull. "Torres, status on those thrusters?" Elena barked. Torres wiped soot from her face, her cautious nature pushing her to double-check every reroute. "Auxiliary power's online, but it's patchwork." "We can maneuver, Captain, just don't ask for miracles." Elena didn't have time for miracles. The Krell were closing to boarding range, their drones swarming like angry hornets. If they latched on, it was over. Marines or not, the Vanguard's crew was outnumbered 10-1. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7, keep us between their heavies and the relay boy. She turned to the comms officer, a wiry ensign named Patel. Hail them. Open frequency. Patel's hands flew over his panel. Channel open, ma'am. Elena leaned forward, her voice cutting through the static like a blade. Krell Command, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UNS Vanguard. You've violated neutral space and endangered civilian traffic. Stand down or we'll consider this an act of war. Laughter echoed back, harsh, synthesized as if filtered through disdain. The Krell Admiral's hologram flickered into view. A towering figure with multifaceted eyes and chitinous armor, mandibles clicking in amusement. Primitives. Your Earth has begged for this, 1,000 warnings ignored. Now witness consequence. The hologram vanished as a fresh salvo hammered the shields, impact after impact, each one peeling away another layer of protection. Elena felt the ship buck, a station exploding in sparks behind her. Shields at 40%, Rao shouted. They're targeting the bridge. Elena's mind raced. Humans had survived worse. Asteroid belts, pirate ambushes, even the first contact skirmishes. But grit alone wouldn't save them now. They needed an edge. Engineering, what's our status on the gravitic mine launcher? The one we jury-rigged from the cargo hauler parts? A pause, then the chief engineer's voice crackled over the intercom. Lopez, ever the witty tinkerer. It's untested, Cap, but loaded and hot. You want to drop it in their path? Drop it, Elena ordered. And pray our math holds. The crew exchanged glances, tension coiling like a spring. Torres plotted the vector, her hands steady now while Rao synced the launch with their drift. Outside, the Krell pressed closer, confident in their numerical superiority. The mine deployed with a muffled thud, a shimmering orb tumbling into the void. It activated on Elena's mark, unfolding into a web of distorted spacetime. Human ingenuity at its rawest, bending physics without the Krell's fancy warp tech. The lead cruiser plowed into it. Reality warped. The ship's bow crumpled inward, engines flaring erratically as gravity tides tore at its frame. Two more vessels swerved too late, caught in the fringe, their formations fracturing. Shears erupted on the bridge, short-lived as return fire grazed the Vanguard's wing. Hull integrity sirens wailed. A breach in Deck 5. They're scattering, Patel reported, awe in his tone. But reinforcements inbound from the outer picket. Elena straightened, the taste of blood in her mouth from a bitten lip. Victory tasted like ash when it came with scars. Patch the breach. Rao, pick off the stragglers. We're not done yet. The stars wheeled as the Vanguard lurched into pursuit, her crew a fragile knot of determination against the endless black. Elena gripped the command rail as the Vanguard shuddered, inertial dampeners straining against the abrupt vector change. Alarms still trilled from the breach patch, a low hum underscoring the bridge's tension. She scanned the tactical display. 3 enemy stragglers limping away, their hulls venting plasma in erratic bursts, while the main fleet regrouped beyond the debris field. Status on those reinforcements? She asked, voice steady despite the throb in her temples. Patel tapped furiously at his console, holograms flickering across his face. Eat 2 minutes, Captain. He's pulling from their outer line, 4 heavies shielded like fortresses. Our guns might dent them, but we'll be paced if we don't thin the herd first. Elena nodded to Rao, who was already locked in, his fingers dancing over targeting arrays. The weapons officer's jaw was set, eyes narrowed in that quiet focus she relied on. Stragglers first, she ordered. Prioritize engines. Don't let them regroup. Rao's response was a curt firing, and the ship bucked as railguns spat slugs into the void. One enemy craft erupted in a silent bloom of fire, debris scattering like shattered glass. The second veered, shields flaring under the barrage, but Rao adjusted on the fly. A microsecond prediction sending a torpedo straight through its weakened flank. The bridge lights dimmed briefly, power surge from the launch. Patel cursed under his breath. Breach is holding, but we're bleeding Atmo on 5. Crew's sealed in, but if we take another hit... Elena pushed down the knot in her gut. No time for what-ifs. The third straggler twisted away, firing wildly, a lucky shot clipping the Vanguard's dorsal array. Sparks flew from a panel near Patel's station. He batted at them without flinching. Shields at 60%, he reported, voice tight. They're buying time for the heavies. She straightened, forcing clarity through the haze of fatigue. The enemy reinforcements were closing, their signatures massive on the scan, behemoths designed to crush upstarts like Earth's fledgling navy. 1,000 provocations ignored, border skirmishes, trade blockades, the silent disappearances of colony ships. This was the 1,001st, and the Vanguard was the answer. Rao, vector us into the debris. Use it for cover. Patel, reroute auxiliary power to forward shields. We're going aggressive. The ship groaned as thrusters fired, plunging into the floating wreckage of the initial clash. Twisted metal fragments pinged off the hull, a makeshift shield against incoming fire. Elena watched the display. The heavies lumbered into range, their weapons charging with ominous glows. They're locking on, Patel said, sweat beading on his brow. Hold steady. Elena's mind raced. Standard doctrine said evade, wait for the fleet. But the Vanguard was alone out here, a scout turned spearhead. Improvise or die. An idea sparked, crude, desperate. The debris field wasn't just cover. It was a weapon waiting to be forged. Rao, can we magnetize a chunk? Pull it into their path? He blinked, then grinned faintly, the first crack in his stoic mask. Tractor beams aren't built for that, but auxiliary fields could nudge one. Risky could snag us too. Do it. Aim for the lead heavy's engines. Patel routed the power, consoles whining in protest. The Vanguard's fields hummed to life, latching onto a basketball court-sized slab of enemy wreckage. Once a cruiser's spine, now a jagged lance. It drifted forward sluggishly at first, then accelerated as Rao fine-tuned the pull. The lead heavy fired, beams lancing through the void, one grazing the Vanguard's flank. Hull plating buckled somewhere aft. Fresh alarms wailed. Elena tasted copper again, her nails digging into the rail. Come on, she muttered. The slab hurtled true, slamming into the heavy's engine nacelle with a bloom of fractured light. The behemoth listed, propulsion crippled, its siblings swerving to avoid the chain reaction. Return fire faltered, disrupted. They're exposed, Rao said, already cueing shots. Railguns thrummed, punching holes in the disarray, but the cost hit hard. A secondary explosion from the damaged heavy rippled back, catching the Vanguard's wing. The ship spun wildly, gravity cutting out for a heart-stopping second before stabilizers kicked in. Elena slammed into the rail, breath knocked out. Lights flickered. Patel's console sparked and he slumped, clutching his arm. Captain, he gasped, we're blind on starboard sensors. She hauled herself up, ignoring the fire in her ribs. Reinforcements still inbound but scattered now. One heavy down, the others reeling. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was a breach. Patch what you can. Rao, keep firing. We're buying time, but we're not running. The stars stabilized on the view screen. The enemy fleet a fractured silhouette against the black. Elena gripped the command rail, her knuckles white against the humming metal. The view screen painted the enemy in jagged outlines. 3 heavies regrouping, their hulls scarred from Rao's pinpoint shots. But the reinforcements were closing fast, a swarm of corvettes peeling off from the rear like angry wasps. Patel, talk to me, she said, voice steady despite the ache in her side. What's the damage? He winced as he tapped at his jury-rigged panel, sparks dancing from the exposed wiring. Starboard arrays fried, Captain. We're down to partial scans, can't track their flanks. And that wing breach? Hull integrity at 60%. One more hit like that and we're venting atmo. Rao swiveled in his seat, sweat beading on his forehead, but his grin was all teeth. 60%? That's optimistic. Feels like we're flying on prayers and spite. Save the wit for the debrief, Elena snapped. Though a flicker of amusement cut the edge, she scanned the tactical overlay. The holographic ghosts of enemy ships converging. The aliens' formation was tightening, learning from the loss of their lead heavy. No more reckless charges. They were probing now, testing for weakness. A new alert blared, proximity warning. 2 corvettes breaking formation, vectors locked on their vulnerable side. Rao, evasive pattern delta. Buy us space. The ship lurched as thrusters fired, inertial dampeners straining. Rao's fingers flew over the controls, the Vanguard twisting like a dancer in the void. Laser fire streaked past, grazing the damaged wing in a shower of molten debris. Too close, Patel muttered, rerouting power from life support to shields. The air grew stuffy, recyclers whining in protest. Elena leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the display. The corvettes were faster, nimbler, but their fire was predictable. Coordinated bursts meant for overwhelming a static target. Humans didn't play that game. Patel, can you spoof their sensors? Make it look like we're drifting dead? He hesitated, glancing at the sparking console. Maybe. If I overload the decoy emitters, but it'll blind us too for a minute, risky. Do it. Rao, stand by for a micro jump. Rao barked a laugh. A what? We're half crippled. Trust me. Elena's tone brooked no argument. This was grit, pure and simple. Turn weakness into a feint. Patel nodded, diving into the hack. The ship shuddered as emitters flared, broadcasting false signatures. A dying vessel, engines cold, tumbling helplessly. On the view screen, the corvettes adjusted, closing in triumphantly. They're buying it, Patel whispered. His arm trembled, but he held the line. Elena counted silently. 3, 2. Now Rao, full burn on my mark. The corvettes loomed, weapons hot. One fired a probing shot, shearing off a chunk of armor plating. Alarms wailed. Mark! Thrusters ignited in a roar. The vanguard surging forward like a coiled spring released. Rao whooped as they barreled through the gap. Rao twisting the nose to rake the lead corvette with railgun fire. The alien ship erupted in a bloom of plasma, debris scattering like confetti. But the second corvette reacted, its countermeasures flaring. A missile locked on, streaking toward the breach. Incoming! Patel yelled. Elena didn't flinch. Countermeasure spread now. Patel slammed the release. Flares burst, confusing the missile's guidance. It veered, detonating harmlessly against the void. The vanguard pulled away, the surviving corvette trailing smoke but pursuing. The main enemy heavies were turning now, their heavier guns swiveling to track. We got one, Rao said, exhaling. But they're onto us. That spoof won't work twice. Elena straightened, tasting blood from a split lip she hadn't noticed. The fleet's fractured silhouette was reforming, reinforcements knitting the gaps. Time was bleeding out. Patch the wing best you can. We're not done fighting. Patel slumped back, exhaustion etching lines on his face. Aye, Captain. But if we push harder, she met his gaze. We push. Earth didn't yield to 1,000 pokes. This is the 1,001st. The ship hummed onward, a lone spark defying the gathering storm. Elena gripped the armrests as the vanguard shuddered, inertial dampeners straining against the latest barrage. Alarms wailed in staccato bursts, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. Status on the port nacelle? She barked, eyes locked on the tactical display where enemy signatures bloomed like predatory flowers. Rao's fingers flew across his console, sweat beading on his forehead. Holding at 60%, Captain. Another hit like that and we'll be drifting. He glanced up, his usual wit sharpened into urgency. They're herding us toward the asteroid field. Smart bastards want to box us in. Patel nodded from engineering's feed, his voice crackling over the intercom. I've rerouted power from life support to shields, but it's a band-aid. Give me 5 minutes to weld that breach and maybe we buy some breathing room. 5 minutes. Elena's jaw tightened. The enemy heavies loomed larger on the holoscreen, their angular hulls scarred from prior exchanges but unyielding. The corvette they'd bloodied earlier was limping back into formation, a vengeful shadow. She could almost feel the weight of Earth's silence behind her. The diplomats' endless negotiations, the ignored incursions until this final straw. No more. Helm, plot an intercept course through the outer ring, she ordered. Use the rocks for cover. Rao, sink our jammers to mimic debris signatures. Make us a ghost in the graveyard. The bridge crew moved like a well-oiled machine, murmurs of confirmation rippling through the hum of machinery. The vanguard banked hard, thrusters firing in precise bursts that sent a jolt through Elena's spine. Outside the viewport, the asteroid field resolved into a chaotic ballet of tumbling stone and ice, remnants of some ancient cataclysm. One fragment, jagged and the size of a shuttle, hurtled past, close enough to rattle the deck plates. Contact! Rao shouted as proximity alerts blared. An enemy fighter darted from behind a boulder, lasers stitching the void. The shot grazed their flank, shearing off a sensor array in a spray of sparks. Elena slammed the comms. Evasive! Pattern Delta now. The ship twisted, engines roaring as it slalomed through the debris. Patel's voice cut in again, strained. Breach sealed, but we're venting atmosphere on deck 3. 2 crew down. Med teams are on it. Her stomach nodded. Names flashed in her mind. Ensign Torres, the young navigator with the quick laugh. Petty Officer Klein, steady as bedrock. Real people, not just numbers. But hesitation was death out here. Acknowledged. Keep her flying, Patel. We're not losing anyone else today. The tactical pinged, a Heavyer's beam sweeping wide, vaporizing a swath of asteroids in a silent explosion of dust. The Vanguard skimmed the edge, Rao's jamming weaving their signal through the interference like thread through a needle's eye. For a heartbeat they were invisible, a sly fox among wolves. Then the Corvette reappeared, closing fast on their tail. Its guns chattered, rounds pummeling the shields. Elena watched the energy readouts plummet, a digital heartbeat fading. "Divert auxiliary power to aft arrays," she snapped. "And ready the torpedo tubes, load with the scatter warheads." Rao hesitated just a fraction. "Scatter warheads in here? It'll turn the field into a blender for us too." "That's the point," Elena said, her voice steel. "They want to hurt us? We'll make the herd stampede." He nodded, inputting the commands. The tubes hummed, loading the experimental payload. Warheads designed to fragment into a storm of microprojectiles, turning open space into a kill zone. Untested in atmosphere, but out here, Desperation's forge. The Corvette fired again, a direct hit buckling the outer hull. Alarms screamed as secondary explosions rocked the ship, lights flickering. Elena tasted copper, another split in her lip, or maybe blood from a crewman's shout. "Fire!" Torpedoes launched in a trio, streaking into the debris. They detonated amid the asteroids, shrapnel erupting in a deadly cascade. The Corvette veered, too late. Fragments tore into its engines, blooming orange fire against the black. But the backlash hit them too. A chunk of rock, superheated and spinning, clipped the Vanguard's wing. The ship lurched, gravity wobbling as systems stuttered. "Stabilizing," the helmsman grunted, wrestling controls. Elena exhaled, watching the Corvette drift lifeless. One less hunter, but the heavies were adapting, their formation tightening like a noose. The asteroid field, once sanctuary, now a trap closing. Patel patched through, voice hoarse. "We've got hull integrity at 40%. One more push, Captain, and we're done." She straightened, resolve hardening. "Then we make this push count. Rao, find me a weak spot in their line. We're going through." The bridge fell quiet, save for the ship's labored breath. Outside, the storm of stone and fire waited, indifferent to their defiance. Rao's fingers danced across the tactical display, holograms flickering like fireflies in a storm. "There," he said, voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. "Gap between the third and fourth heavy. Asteroid shadow at bearing 247. It's narrow, but their sensors won't penetrate the debris cloud." Elena leaned in, eyes narrowing at the projection. The enemy formation loomed, a wall of armored behemoths, their plasma emitters glowing like predatory eyes. The aliens, those inscrutable craft, had chased humanity's fringe outposts for months, dismissing Earth's warnings as bleats from lesser prey. But Vanguard was no outpost frigate. She was a jury-rigged beast born of desperation and dry dock ingenuity. "Helm plot it," Elena ordered. "Full burn on my mark. Patel, reroute auxiliary power to forward shields. We're punching through." The engineer grumbled over the comm, but his team complied. A low hum built through the deck plates, vibrations rattling Elena's teeth. She gripped the command rail, glancing at her crew. Rao, the wiry tactician with a gambler's grin. Lena, the helmswoman, her cautious hands now iron on the yoke. And Thomas, the quiet comms officer, patching signals amid the static. The ship surged forward. Asteroids whipped past, close enough to scrape paint from the hull. Alarms wailed as a Krath corvette veered into their path, its turret swiveling. "Evasive!" Elena barked. Lena twisted the controls, Vanguard corkscrewing through a boulder field. The corvette's volley scorched space where they'd been. But a stray rock pulverized the aliens' bridge in retaliation. Debris pinged off their shields like hail. "They're flanking," Rao warned. "Two heavies breaking off, aiming to pinch us." Elena nodded, mind racing. The gap Rao spotted was shrinking. The Krath were learning, adapting their noose. Hull integrity dipped to 38%. Another hit, and they'd vent atmosphere. "Options?" she asked, voice clipped. Thomas cleared his throat. "Their comms are broadcasting surrender frequencies. Standard protocol for primitives, they think. Mock it up, draw fire?" Rao shook his head. "Too risky. They're not buying bluffs anymore." Lena glanced back, her cautious nature cracking. "What if we use the field? Slingshot off that big rock at 250. Gravity pull could scatter their line." Elena considered it. Unorthodox, but humans didn't win by playing fair. "Do it." Thomas jammed their targeting with a feedback loop. "Make it look like sensor ghosts." The crew moved like a well-oiled machine, born of too many drills and too few victories. Vanguard arced toward the massive asteroid, engines flaring blue, the rock's gravity tugged, slinging them sideways into the gap. Krath heavies lumbered to intercept, but the maneuver worked. The debris cloud erupted around them, sensors blinding in the mineral haze. A heavy's beam lanced out, grazing their flank. Sparks flew on the bridge. A console exploded in a shower of shrapnel. Rao cursed, clutching a gash on his arm, blood slicking the panel. "Hull at 25, Patel yelled from engineering. "We're bleeding air, Seal Bay 3. Elena ignored the pain in her shoulder from the jolt. "Keep pushing." "Rao, nav update?" "Clearing the gap. Now!" His voice held a note of triumph, muffled by the hiss of emergency foam. They burst through, the asteroid field giving way to open void. Behind, the Krath formation faltered, collisions rippling through their disrupted line. One heavy-vented plasma crippled. Another pursued, but too slow. Elena allowed a breath. "Status?" "Engines holding," Lena reported. "But we're limping. Jump drive's offline. Patel says it'll take hours." Rao wiped blood from his eyes. "They'll regroup. We bought time, not escape." She straightened, staring at the stars ahead. Earth's distant light a faint promise. The Krath had provoked 1,000 times, ignored every plea. This was the 1,001st, and Vanguard's fire would echo. But the cost mounted: Rao's wound, the breached bay, the crew's frayed edges. Survival demanded more than grit. It demanded adaptation, human style. Elena keyed the comm. "All hands prep for microjumps, we're not done yet." Elena gripped the armrest as the first microjump shuddered through the hull, stars streaking into blurred lines outside the viewport. The Vanguard lurched forward in fits and starts. Each burst a desperate lunge toward the outer rim where the Krath pursuit might thin. Rao slumped beside her on the bridge, his shoulder bandaged but his face pale under the red emergency lights. "Patel, talk to me," she barked into the intercom. "How many jumps before we overload?" From engineering, Patel's voice crackled back, laced with that unflappable calm he always mustered. "3, maybe 4, Captain. The coils are heating up. I'm rerouting power from life support to bias margin. It'll get chilly down here." Lena swiveled in her chair at tactical, her fingers dancing over the console. "Sensors picking up 3 Krath scouts on our tail. They're matching velocity, but our jumps are throwing them off, for now." Elena nodded, her mind racing through vectors. The plan was simple: hopscotch through the debris field of a dead moon, using the wreckage as cover to shake the hunters. But simplicity in space meant razor-thin margins. One mistimed burst and they'd slam into a chunk of frozen rock the size of a frigate. She glanced at Rao, who met her eyes with a grim nod. "Your call on the next vector," he said, voice rough. "I'm not navigating with this arm." "Vector 7 Alpha," she decided, punching it into the navcomp. "Engage on my mark." The ship groaned as the jump drive whined to life, propelling them into the void again. Elena felt the deck plates vibrate. Under her boots, a reminder of how fragile their improvisation was. The Krath tech was sleek, purpose-built for chases like this. Vanguard was a retrofitted hauler, her guts a patchwork of human fixes. The jump spat them out amid a glittering haze of metallic shards, the remnants of some long-forgotten skirmish. Lena's console lit up with proximity alerts. "Debris field acquired, but Captain, they've got a lock. Incoming torpedoes 3 minutes out." Rao leaned forward, ignoring the pain that flashed across his features. "Evasive pattern Delta? We weave through the big pieces." "Too predictable," Elena countered, scanning the holo display. The torpedoes were Krath smart weapons designed to predict and adapt. No, they needed something messier. Her gaze snagged on a cluster of larger hulks, twisted frames from an old battle, laced with unstable fusion residues. "Patel, can you spike the engines, make us look like a drifting wreck?" A pause, then Patel's reply. "Affirmative. I'll vent plasma from the aft bays, mimic a core breach, but it'll blind our sensors for 30 seconds. Do it." Elena turned to Lena. "Arm the decoys. Launch 2, time to our spike." The bridge hummed with activity, each crew member locked into the rhythm of survival. Rao sketched a quick adjustment on his pad, his good hand steady despite the blood seeping through the bandage. The spike hit as the first torpedo closed. Vanguard belched a plume of superheated gas, her signature fading into the debris like a ghost. Alarms wailed briefly before Lena silenced them. In the sudden sensor blackout, Elena held her breath, the only sound the faint hiss of cooling vents. Rao's hand tightened on the console edge. If this doesn't work. It will, she said, more to convince herself. The 30 seconds stretched like hours, the viewport a silent void. Then, a distant bloom of light, the decoys detonating, drawing fire. Lena whooped as the board cleared. Torpedoes acquired false targets. Scouts are breaking formation to investigate. Elena exhaled, steering them deeper into the field. But victory tasted like ash. The jump drive's warning lights flickered erratically. Now when Rao's wound had reopened during the maneuver, he waved off the medic drone buzzing near him. Save it for later. We've got incoming on the far side. Looks like a Krath Heavy. The Heavy was a beast, its silhouette cutting through the haze like a predator emerging from fog. Lena's scans confirmed it. Ventral cannons charging, no mercy in its approach. They're hailing us, she reported. Standard Krath demand, surrender or be slagged. Elena stood, squaring her shoulders. Patch it through. The comm crackled, and a guttural voice filled the bridge, translated by the AI into clipped English. Human vessel, your resistance ends. Power down or face annihilation. Earth's provocations cease here. Rao snorted, wiping sweat from his brow. Tell them Earth's been provoked 1,000 times. This is just the echo. She keyed the response herself, voice steady. Vanguard to Krath Heavy. We've ignored your 1,000 jabs. Consider this our answer. Then she cut the line, signaling Patel. One more jump, straight at them. The crew exchanged glances, Lena's eyes wide, Rao's narrowed in approval. It was madness barreling toward the enemy, but in the debris it might just work. The drive engaged with a thunderous roar, hurling them forward. The Heavy loomed larger, its cannons blazing a warning shot that scorched past their hull. In the chaos, Elena spotted the improvisation, a jagged spar of wreckage, tumbling end over end. Lena, tractor it. Slingshot maneuver. Use the debris to swing us behind them. Copy that. The tractor beam latched on, yanking the spar into their path. Momentum built as they swung wide, the Heavy's fire raking empty space. Rao grinned through the pain. You're turning their playground against them. The spar whipped around the frigate's flank like a flail in the void, its mass amplifying their velocity as the tractor beam held firm. Alarms blared, hull stress at critical, inertial dampeners whining under the strain. Elena gripped the command rail, her knuckles white, watching the Heavy cruiser's silhouette blur against the starfield. Lena, release on my mark. Rao, prep the railguns for point blank. Aye, Cap, Lena replied, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her brow. The young engineer wiped it away with a trembling hand, fingers dancing over the console. She'd only been out of the academy a year, but in this moment, her focus was iron. Rao shifted in his seat, wincing as fresh blood seeped through the makeshift bandage on his shoulder. The shrapnel from the earlier hit had torn deep, but he waved off Patel's concern. The medic hovered nearby, hypospray at the ready. Save it for after, Doc. I've got shots to line up. The swing completed its arc, slingshotting them into the Heavy's blind spot. Debris fields like this, remnants of a dozen skirmishes, were the Krell's favored hunting grounds, but today they became the humans' ally. The cruiser's engines flared, trying to pivot, but the frigate was already ghosting past its dorsal spine, close enough to see the scorch marks from their own earlier volleys. Mark! Elena barked. Lena cut the beam. The spar hurtled free, smashing into the Heavy's sensor array with a silent bloom of sparks. The frigate surged ahead, railguns humming to life. Rao's targeting overlay lit up green. He fired in staccato. Bursts, tungsten slugs punching through armor plating like hot knives through foil. One round shattered a turret. Another glanced off the engine nacelle, venting plasma in a brief azure geyser. But the Krell weren't done. The Heavy shuddered, deploying a swarm of drones, tiny razor-edged hunters that detached from its bays like angry hornets. They fanned out, locking onto the frigate's exhaust ports. "Incoming!" Patel shouted, abandoning his post to man the point defense lasers. Beams lanced out, vaporizing too, but the rest closed fast. Elena spun toward the tactical display. The drones were vectoring for a suicide run, aiming to cripple their drive core. One more hit like the last and they'd be adrift in this graveyard. Evasive pattern delta. Rao, divert power to shields aft. Already on it, he grunted, rerouting from non-essentials. Lights dimmed in the bridge. The hum of recyclers faded to a whisper. The first drone impacted with a jolt that rattled teeth, shearing off a sensor vein. Alarm screamed, decompression in Auxiliary Bay 3. Lena cursed under her breath, pulling up schematics. We can seal it, but that'll buy them time to regroup. Cap the Heavies launching torpedoes, 3 inbound low yield but clustered. Elena's mind raced. Charging straight in had worked for the swing, but now they were exposed. A minnow dancing too close to the shark. The Krell had provoked humanity for years. Raids on outposts, blockades on trade lanes. But this sector, this debris-choked nebula, was their latest gambit. Earth had ignored the pinpricks, building strength in the shadows. No more. Patel, get to engineering. Rig the debris field. Use our remaining mines to chain react with that spar we just flung. Make it a fireworks show. The medic nodded, grabbing his kit and bolting for the lift. On it. Give me 2 minutes. Rao chuckled darkly, lining up another shot. Turning their trash into our bomb. Classic. The torpedoes streaked closer, proximity fuses beeping warnings. Lena jinked the ship, dodging the lead one by a hair's breadth. It detonated harmlessly in the void, its flash illuminating twisted wreckage like bones in moonlight. The second grazed their shields, buckling them forward. Elena felt the deck tilt, gravity compensators straining. Drones nipped at their heels, one exploding against the hull in a puff of debris. Prow swatted another with a laser burst, but a third latched on, boring into the armor with acidic drills. Sparks flew in the engineering feed. Patel yelling over the comms as he fought to pry it off. Come on, Doc, Elena muttered, eyes locked on the Heavy. It was turning now, broadsides aligning for a killing blow. The third torpedo loomed unerring. Then Patel's voice crackled through. Charges set. Detonate on your go. Now, Elena said. The mines ignited in sequence, a daisy chain rippling through the field. The spar, still tumbling from their maneuver, caught the blast wave. Fragments accelerating into a shotgun spray that pelted the Heavy's flanks. Drones scattered or shredded. The torpedoes veered off course, detonating prematurely in the maelstrom. The cruiser listed, engines flickering. Rao seized the opening, unleashing a full barrage. Slugs tore into the breach, igniting secondary explosions that rippled along its hull. The Krell ship vented atmosphere, drifting sternward as fires bloomed internally. Cheers erupted on the bridge, short, ragged, born of exhaustion. Lena slumped back, exhaling. Rao's grin widened, pain forgotten for a beat. But Elena's gaze lingered on the tactical plot. The Heavy wasn't dead yet. Distress signals were pulsing out, calling reinforcements, and in the distance more signatures blinked to life, Krell patrols converging. They'd bought time, not victory. The cost tallied already. Rao's wound. Rao gripped the armrest, his vision blurring at the edges from the blood loss, but he forced his focus on the tactical display. Helm, full burn toward the debris field. Use the wreck for cover. His voice cut through the bridge hum, steady despite the fire in his shoulder. Lena punched the coordinates, her fingers flying across the console. The ship lurched forward, engines whining as they pushed past Redline. Aye, Captain. ETA 2 minutes. But those patrols, they're vectoring in fast. 3 minutes out at best. Elena leaned over the sensor station, her eyes narrowing at the flickering signatures. She was the cautious one, always calculating odds, but now her jaw set in quiet resolve. Distress signals still broadcasting. If we don't jam it, we'll have a swarm on us. Rao, your call. Divert power to ECM now? He nodded, wincing as the motion tugged at his wound. The med patch they'd slapped on earlier was holding, but barely. Warm stickiness seeped through his uniform. Do it. Strip non-essentials. Lights, life support and auxiliary sections, whatever it takes. The bridge dimmed slightly, consoles casting long shadows in the emergency glow. Alarms chirped warnings about power draw, but Lena silenced them with a flick. ECM active, signal strength dropping. 80% masked, that'll buy us a window. The view screen filled with the drifting hulk of the Krell cruiser, its hull a jagged ruin venting plasma in lazy spirals. Chunks of armor and twisted struts floated like icebergs in the void, the debris field a graveyard from their earlier barrage. Rao studied it, mind racing. They couldn't outrun the reinforcements. The Indomitable was built for endurance, not sprints. But humans didn't run, they adapted. Scan for intact sections, he ordered. Something we can use. Magnetics, thrusters, anything to sling this tub around. Elena cross-referenced the data, her brow furrowing. Port side, mid-deck. There's a Krell auxiliary drive cluster still hot. If we tractor it, we could jury-rig a decoy burst. Make it look like we're breaking away while we loop back. Lena glanced up, skeptical but intrigued. Risky. Their patrols have grav sensors. One wrong pulse and we're lit up. Rao's grin flashed, brief and fierce. Riskier to sit here bleeding out. Make it happen. Elena, you're on point. Coordinate with engineering. She acknowledged with a sharp nod, patching through to the lower decks. The ship shuddered as tractor beams latched onto the debris, hauling a mangled drive pod toward their ventral bay. Sparks flew on the internal feeds. Engineers in void suits wrestled the alien tech into place, sparks illuminating their grim faces under helmet lights. Minutes stretched taut. The first Krell patrol closed the gap, a sleek interceptor darting through the outer markers. Its scan swept the field, probing like fingers in the dark. They're pinging the wreck, Lena reported, voice tight. ECM holding, but not forever. Rao straightened, ignoring the fresh stab of pain. Deploy the decoy on my mark, then flip us hard, full evasive into the dense scatter. Elena counted down from the console. 3, 2, 1, burst away. The drive pod ignited in a false flare, mimicking an escape vector toward the system's edge. The interceptor veered, weapons hot, chasing the ghost. Indomitable rolled, thrusters firing in a corkscrew that pressed everyone against their stations. Debris clanged off the hull, a metallic rain that rattled the bulkheads. But the second patrol wasn't fooled. It materialized from the shadow of a larger fragment, torpedoes streaking toward them in a deadly arc. Brace, Rao barked. The first torpedo grazed the shields, buckling them in a shower of energy. Alarms wailed, hull integrity at 60%. Lena wrestled the ship sideways, but the second fish homed true, slamming into the aft quarter. Explosion rocked them. Rao tasted blood, the world tilting. Consoles sparked, and Elena shouted over the din. Aft engineering hit. We've got fires, sealing bulkheads now. Smoke curled from vents, acrid and choking. Rao hauled himself up, barking into the comm. Damage report, keep us flying. A junior officer patched through, voice strained. Containment holding, sir, but we're venting plasma. Another hit like that. Elena cut in, her calm fracturing just a hair. Captain, the third patrol's joining the first. They're boxing us in. Rao's mind whirred, sifting options. The debris field offered hiding spots, but not escape. Then it clicked. Human grit meant turning weakness to weapon. Lena, vector us into the cruiser's core breach. Use the radiation shadow. She hesitated a beat. That's suicide. The rads will fry our sensors. Trust it. We've got the suits. They don't expect us to hug the fire. She complied, plotting the insane dive. The ship plunged toward the dying giant, weaving through venting gas clouds that glowed eerie blue. The patrols pursued but hesitated at the edge, their organic crews wary of the lethal soup. Indomitable slipped into the shadow, sensors going blind as radiation stormed the hull. Rao felt the deck hum, the ship groaning under the strain. Elena monitored from her station, gloves charred from a short. They're circling outside. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they flush us. Rao leaned forward, eyes on the faint outlines. Prep the railguns. When they poke in, we make them regret it. The weight clawed at them, tension thick as the smoke. Rao's wound throbbed. A reminder of Rao's wound throbbed, a reminder of the boarding skirmish that had nearly cost them the bridge. He ignored it, focusing on the tactical display where red blips hovered like vultures. The alien patrols, sleek biomechanical horrors from the Krivath fleet, circled the gas giant's outer atmosphere, their sensor sweeps probing the toxic haze. They're tightening the noose, Elena muttered, her fingers dancing over the console. Sparks jumped from a fried panel, but she didn't flinch. Cautious by nature, she'd always been the one to double-check seals and run sims, but now her voice carried an edge of steel. Radiation's spiking our shields by 30%. We can't hold this dive much longer. Rao nodded, sweat beading on his brow despite the recycled air. He was the brave one, the captain who charged into the fray, but even he felt the ship's limits. Indomitable was a relic, Earth's defiant answer to a galaxy that saw humans as pests. No sleek warp drives here, just raw thrust and human grit. Buy us time. Vent the auxiliary coolant. Make it look like we're breaking apart. She hesitated, eyes flicking to him. That'll cook our engines. We might not climb out. Better than capture. His tone brooked no argument. The Krivoth didn't take prisoners. They dissected them for study. Earth had swallowed 1,000 slights, stolen colonies, embargoed trade, mock executions broadcast galaxy-wide. But this provocation, the ambush on their diplomatic envoy, demanded fire. Elena keyed the command. Alarms wailed as superheated vapor jetted from the hull, blooming into a false debris field. The patrols scattered momentarily, their organic pilots recoiling from the simulated catastrophe. Indomitable shuddered, reel strain buckling a support strut somewhere below decks. In the respite, Rao activated the comms relay, patching through to the hidden probe they'd launched earlier. It was a Hail Mary, a microdrone rigged with Earth's jury-rigged EMP burst, meant to blind the enemy sensors long enough for a flanking run. Status on the bird? Deployed and ghosting, came the voice of Jax, their wiry engineer from the lower bays. Witty even in crisis, he added. She's swimming like a drunk eel in this soup. Give me 2 mics to sync the pulse. The ship bucked as a gas plume engulfed them, visibility dropping to 0. Rao gripped the armrest, tasting ozone. Outside, the dying giant storms raged, crimson lightning forking through ammonia clouds. One strike could fry their circuits outright. Elena's console lit up. Incoming! 2 patrols diving. They've got our vector. Helm evasive pattern delta. Rao's order snapped out. The ship rolled hard, G-forces pinning them to their seats. Railgun capacitors whined to life, auto-targeting the closest threats. The first patrol burst through the cloud, its carapace iridescent and pulsing with bioluminescent veins. Energy lances streaked past, scorching Indomitable's flank. Rao fired manually, the railgun slugs punching through the enemy's shield in a spray of vaporized alloy. Got one, Elena whooped. But her triumph faded as the second patrol closed, its boarding pods deploying like angry hornets. Jax's voice crackled over the intercom. Pulse ready, firing now. A silent wave rippled from the probe, invisible to the naked eye but devastating to Krivoth tech. The lead patrol spasmed, systems frying in a cascade of overloads. It veered wildly, slamming into a gas pocket and erupting in a fireball that lit the haze orange. The remaining pods scattered, leaderless. But victory came at a price. Indomitable's engines coughed, the vented coolant taking its toll. Warning lights flared across the bridge, hull integrity at 60%, core temp rising. Rao exhaled, slumping back. Good work, team, but we're not out yet. Plot the exfil, straight through the eye of this storm. Elena met his gaze, her caution yielding to resolve. The ship pressed on, deeper into the maelstrom, humanity's unyielding spark cutting through the dark. The Indomitable shuddered as it plunged into the storm's heart, plasma winds howling against the hull like 1,000 claws. Rao gripped the armrests, eyes locked on the forward view screen where the gas giant's eye swirled. A calm vortex amid the chaos, their only shot at escape. Helm, steady as she goes. Elena, status on those engines. They're fighting us, Elena replied, her fingers dancing over the console, sweat beading on her forehead. The cautious engineer had always preferred calculated risks, but now her voice carried an edge of steel. Coolant reserves are critically low. We push too hard, we cook the core. Jax, the wiry comms officer with a perpetual smirk even in hell, chimed in from his station. Incoming hail from the scattered pods, they're regrouping. Krivoth commanders patching through a demand for surrender. Want me to play it? Rao shook his head sharply. Ignore it. We're not here to chat. The bridge lights flickered, casting long shadows across the crew's faces. Outside, the haze thickened, lightning forking through the clouds in jagged blue arcs that lit the debris field like a graveyard of stars. A low groan echoed through the deck plating as the ship hit a turbulence pocket. Alarms blared, structural stress mounting. Elena cursed under her breath, rerouting power from non-essentials. Captain, if we don't vent the excess heat soon, we'll lose propulsion entirely. But venting means exposing the manifolds to the soup. Rao leaned forward, calculating. The Krivoth patrols were closing in again, their sensor ghosts flickering on the tactical display. 3 pods, leaderless but hungry, vectoring toward the Indomitable's flank. Humanity had danced on the edge of war for years, ignoring slights and border skirmishes, but this incursion into their probe's path had snapped the line. Now survival meant turning the storm itself into a weapon. Jax, boost the probe's EMP field. Modulate it to resonate with the plasma winds. If we can ionize the gas around us, it'll blind their sensors long enough for a slingshot maneuver. Jax's eyes widened, but he nodded, cracking his knuckles. Crazy but human crazy. Uploading now. His hands flew across the keys, the probe, still tethered by a thin data line, humming to life. A pulse rippled out, invisible at first, then blooming into a web of ionized fury that clashed with the storm's fury. The view screen erupted in static as the effect took hold. The pursuing pods veered, their formations breaking like waves on rock. One clipped a lightning tendril, exploding in a silent bloom of fire that vanished into the haze. But the Indomitable paid dearly. The improvised field backlashed, frying auxiliary circuits. Lights dimmed to emergency red and Elena's console sparked. "Manifolds are breaching! We're venting, hold on!" The ship bucked violently, heat blooming through the corridors like an open wound. Rao braced as bulkheads creaked, the air growing thick with the acrid tang of melting insulation. Jack slammed his fist on the override, stabilizing the comms just as a final pod closed the gap, its weapons hot. "Target their drive core," Rao ordered, voice calm amid the roar. "One shot, make it count." Elena, ignoring the burn on her hand from a shorted panel, aligned the turrets. The railgun thrummed, spitting a kinetic slug that punched through the pod's armor. It fragmented mid-chase, shards spiraling into the vortex. Silence fell, broken only by the ship's labored hum. The eye of the storm enveloped them. A brief pocket of stillness where the winds died to whispers. Hull integrity held at 38%, but they were through. Exfil vector clear. Rao exhaled, scanning his crew. Jax grinned faintly. Elena wiped her brow with a trembling hand. They'd bought time, but the Krivath fleet loomed beyond the gas giant. Provocation turned to reckoning. "Patch me through to Earth Command," he said. "Tell them we're coming home, with fire in our wake." Elena gripped the comms panel, her fingers steady despite the ache in her shoulder from the earlier jolt. The signal cut through the static, linking to Earth's relay beacons, faint but holding. Rao's voice came next, calm and edged with resolve as he outlined their report. The Krivath ambush, the storm's fury, the railgun's desperate shot. No embellishments, just facts that painted the fleet's shadow creeping closer. Jax monitored the scopes, his eyes narrowing at the blips resolving into cruisers. "They're vectoring in, Captain. 3 heavies, escorts peeling off. We bought minutes, not hours." He adjusted the throttle, the engines whining in protest, but the ship surged forward, slingshotting around the gas giant's gravity well. Earth Command's response crackled back, Admiral Voss's gravelly tone unbroken. "Rendezvous at Outpost Epsilon. We've mobilized the response wing, Ignis and her sisters. Your data's lighting up the war room. Hold the line." Rao nodded to himself, then turned to Elena. "Full burn to Epsilon. Jax, plot the evasion weave. Keep us dancing." Elena routed power from non-essentials, lights dimming as shields flickered brighter. The vortex's remnants tugged at them, but they broke free, stars sharpening ahead. Alarms blared as the lead Krivath cruiser loosed a salvo, plasma lances streaking like vengeful comets. Jax rolled the ship hard, the deck tilting under them, and Elena's improvised patch on the turrets held just long enough to return fire. A lucky hit grazed the enemy's flank, buying them another dodge. Tension coiled in the bridge, breath sinking with the hum of systems straining. Rao's hand rested on the console, his mind flashing to the 1,000 slights ignored. The border skirmishes, the silent invasions, the probes dismissed as anomalies. No more. The response wing appeared on scopes, Ignis leading, her rail arrays charged, a wall of human steel cutting the void. Krivath signatures scattered under the barrage, the fleet's arrogance fracturing against coordinated grit. Elena watched the readouts, a fierce smile breaking through. They limped into Epsilon's docking arms, the station's lights welcoming like old friends. Repairs would come, scars would linger, but the message was sent. Earth had answered,